Tonight, putting the brakes on gas-powered vehicles, examining the new roadmap to net zero. The timelines, the targets.
Electric cars are the future.
And exploring the possible bumps.
Right now, I do not see a pathway to the target that the federal government has established.
Stunning surge. What's behind Canada's fastest population boom since the 1950s? In Iceland, new gas pollution warnings as dramatic fountains of lava spew from a roaring volcano. Plus, Celine Dion's sister shares a heartbreaking medical update about her rare neurological condition. And the public call to adopt the pride of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. A great gallop to find new homes for horses in need.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening, everyone. How and what you drive in the future became clearer today. By 2026, new federal regulations require automakers to ensure that 1 in 5 vehicles on the market be electric, increasing to 100% by 2035. Gas-powered models sold before that year will remain on the road, but no additional ones will be added. Ottawa says the measures are required to help Canada achieve its emissions reductions targets, but as CTV's Alison Bamford reports, there are still many questions about the possible bumps on the road to the final destination.
New national electric vehicle standards will be a bigger lift for some provinces over others.
We don't have the supports in place to allow all Canadians to switch to electric.
By 2026, electric vehicles must make up 20% of new car sales, 60% by 2030, and 100% by 2035. Currently, only BC and Quebec meet the 20% threshold. They both have EV sales mandates at the provincial level and have had consumer rebates the longest.
The benefits from electric vehicles go beyond saving the climate and consumer cost. They also mean sustainably cleaner and healthier hair.
But cost, wait times, and the availability of charging stations are key concerns. Canada will need about 442,000 EV chargers to power its goal in 2035, according to the Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association. Natural Resources Canada says there are over 25,000 across the country, and 85% of them are in Quebec, Ontario, and BC.
That means building 35,000 new chargers every single year. Currently, we build 6,000.
The new regulations offer incentives for automakers to invest in chargers, and Ottawa is working on national building code revisions to ensure new multi-unit buildings have charging capabilities.
You'll have private industries investing more, governments investing to build out that infrastructure. So it'll kind of keep in pace with these vehicle adoptions.
Last year, the government spent nearly $270 million on incentives for its zero-emissions vehicle program, and recently budgeted $43.6 billion in subsidies for EV battery production over 10 years. But some critics want to pump the brakes on spending and see what's actually driving EV interest with consumers.
Let's let that play out a little bit more before we're just dumping in more and more taxpayer dollars into more subsidies.
Canadian auto companies sold a record number of electric vehicles this year, but would still need to nearly double that number within the next 3 years to meet the first target of 20% by 2026. Omar?
All right, Alison, thank you. Well, not quite the holiday cheer economists were hoping for. The progress made on taming Canada's inflation plateaued last month. The rate remains steady at 3.1%. Mortgage interest costs saw the biggest jump, up nearly 30% year over year. Food inflation slowed for the 5th month in a row, but prices are still up nearly 5% from a year ago. Also increasing is Canada's population, and at a pace not seen in decades. The growth over the first 9 months of this year has already exceeded the total growth in any other full year. CTV's Kevin Gallagher on what's behind the boom.
Despite an affordability crisis, Canada is attracting immigrants at a record pace.
We've grown more in the last 3 months than traditionally we've grown in an entire year.
According to Statistics Canada, the country's population grew by more than 430,000 people between July and September, driving Canada's population above 40.5 million.
I've always dreamt of living on this part of the world, to live in a democratic, free nation.
Journalist Mahabat Atikanova and her chemist husband Sultan immigrated from Kazakhstan in September. The couple arrived in Toronto in the midst of a housing crisis and are already on the move.
We think that we cannot afford a lifestyle we want in Toronto, so we decided to move out of Toronto, GTA in general. So we're moving to Edmonton.
International migrants are driving a population boom not seen since the late 50s. As that baby boom generation increasingly retires, the federal government is trying to fill shortages.
So if it wasn't for immigration, we'd have essentially a labor force decline.
About 313,000 of the new arrivals in the third quarter alone are temporary residents. Unlike permanent residents, the number of people coming on temporary work permits or as international students can vary.
If they don't know if we're going to have 60,000 international students next year or 600,000 international students next year, you can't really plan for that. You don't know how many houses to build.
With more than 1 million immigrants arriving in the first 9 months this year, every province and territory except the Northwest Territories has seen population growth, with Alberta, Ontario, and Prince Edward Island seeing the largest increases. Omar?
All right, Kevin, thanks. There are rising tensions in the Red Sea tonight, triggering a jump in the price of oil. Canada is now joining a new international mission to protect ships that are coming under attack by drones and ballistic missiles from Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen, threatening global trade. This while new images of hostages held captive in Gaza were released today. Here's CTV's Adrian Gobriel.
From fighting on the ground in Gaza and now mounting tensions on international waters. For days now, Yemen's Iranian-backed Houthi militias have been attacking and boarding commercial ships in the Red Sea, claiming they're acting in solidarity with Palestinians as they target vessels with Israeli connections. The escalation has prompted a joint response from the United States, Canada, and 10 other nations.
We've launched Operation Prosperity Guardian.
Today, the Department of National Defense sent out this statement saying the Canadian Armed Forces are deploying 3 staff officers to support the operation. A government official telling CTV News tonight that while the Canadian Navy is facing capacity challenges, they view Canada's contributions to the Red Sea region as significant.
The war in Gaza is affecting the global economy, so this is a good step for Canada.
Danish shipping giant Maersk and BP have paused shipments through the region. Approximately 10% of the world's oil travels through the Suez Canal. Multiple companies have announced that their ships are taking the long detour around South Africa through the Cape of Good Hope to avoid a potential attack. Any sustained disruption in the Red Sea or the Gulf of Aden corridors could lead to higher oil prices and inflation.
This blockade would continue into the new year. We will certainly see impact.
For a second straight day, new unidentified video of Israeli hostages has been released. Identified as 79-year-old Gadi Moses and 47-year-old Elad Katzir, both appeared gaunt and distraught as they pleaded for their release. The Hamas-led health authorities say at least 20 Palestinians were killed in Rafah during an Israeli airstrike today. Israel's president says his government is open to negotiating the release of more captives.
Israel is ready for another humanitarian pause and additional humanitarian aid in order to enable the release of hostages.
Though Hamas has previously stated that any negotiations for a prisoner exchange will only happen once the war ends. This comes as a UN Security Council vote calling for a ceasefire was postponed for a second consecutive day, as members try and work with the United States to get them to support their draft resolution to halt hostilities. Omar.
All right, Adrian, thank you. And new numbers from police in Canada's largest city show a staggering spike in hate crimes since October 7th.
We are steadfast in our resolve to ensure that the Palestinian, Muslim, Jewish, all communities for that matter, are kept safe from acts of hatred and violence.
Toronto police say the number doubled to nearly 100 compared to the same time period last year. More than half of these reported incidents targeted Jewish Canadians, while 20 were anti-Muslim. Rescuers are racing to find survivors in sub-zero temperatures after an earthquake rocked northwestern China. The death toll has climbed to at least 131, with more than 700 injured. Residents fled the 6.2 magnitude quake as disastrous conditions contributed to the worst earthquake in nearly a decade. Fatalities are expected to increase now that icy conditions are complicating rescue efforts. There is no threat to life from Iceland's raging volcano, but there are new warnings tonight. Gas pollution could reach the capital over the next few hours. Iceland is one of the world's most volcanically active areas, with an eruption on average every 4 to 5 years. But since 2021, that has increased to once every 12 months. And as CTV's Joy Malbon reports, the images from this latest one have been dramatic.
It's an incredible sight, terrifying even, to see the earth cracked open. Fountains of fiery lava exploding into the night sky, rivers of fire dangerously close to a power plant, and just 50 kilometers from Iceland's capital, Reykjavik.
It's just in time for Christmas.
Iceland is a volcanic hotspot, making it a top tourist attraction, and this, the largest, most powerful eruption in years.
I was not surprised. There were so many signs that magma was moving to very, very shallow levels in the crust.
The warnings were all there. Last month in the southwest peninsula near Grindavik, a fishing village, cracks opened up on highways. Steam poured out of the ground about a half hour from Iceland's international airport. After weeks of tremors, 4,000 people were evacuated in November, and the famous Blue Lagoon spa was shut down.
I think the main issue right now is, will the lava make it to the town? And if it does, what will be the impact in terms of infrastructure?
This eruption much different from 2010, where giant clouds of ash flowed over Europe. 100,000 flights were grounded, halting air travel for days. So far, no flight disruptions as of yet. Government officials worry the risk now? Toxic gases.
I think they're worried about the air quality in Reykjavik. So I think that this eruption is producing, gas and particles. So yeah, you don't want to go near it.
Tell that to the tourists who couldn't resist.
It's a once in a lifetime for us.
It's just like something from a movie.
Scientists warn it's still too early to say how long the eruption will last. These spectacular views could go on for months or just days. Joy Malbon, CTV News, Washington.
Thousands along Canada's east coast are still cleaning up tonight after a powerful storm tore through the region, and there's more wet weather on its way leading up to Christmas. CTV's Sarah Plowman reports.
After the storm comes the sound of no power. Strong winds wiped out trees, and with it, electricity for tens of thousands.
It almost sounded like a freight train out in the backyard.
The Fontaines had just gone to bed when their sense of safety peeled away.
We heard this huge rumble. It sounded like a tornado come over the house.
The roof blew into the backyard. Bricks soared.
Went through our car, and car's totaled too.
Roofing ripped away at a neighbor's home and at the University of New Brunswick. In Nova Scotia, more destruction. One tree fell on a moving car. The driver wasn't seriously hurt. The storm blasted the northeastern U.S. At least 5 people died, including a 76-year-old woman in New York who was swept away. In New Jersey, the Passaic River spilled into neighborhoods, prompting evacuations.
It's going to only get worse before it gets better.
One house in the flood zone burned as crews struggled to reach it. This man is dealing with his second major flood this year.
Mother Nature has not been kind to us here in 2023.
All of it causing travel headaches a week before Christmas. In southwestern New Brunswick, the region's hospital was without power for most of the day. Across the region, crews are choreographing a cleanup. Back at the Fontaines, help is here.
My husband's company that he works for, they're all here helping. It's amazing. They're all amazing people.
With temperatures expected to plummet, warming centers are being set up. NB Power says it's too early to say when power will be restored, and people here should be prepared for prolonged outages. Omar.
All right, Sarah, thank you. A historic ruling today against former U.S. President Donald Trump from Colorado's top court. It has barred Trump from appearing on the state's ballot in next year's presidential election because of his role in the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. It's the first time a presidential candidate has been disqualified under a rarely used provision of the U.S. Constitution. A spokesman for Trump called it a flawed decision and says he'll appeal to the Supreme Court. Coming up, an update on a Canadian superstar's health battle. Celine Dion's sister shares details on the singer's fight against an excruciating condition. Plus, the merry holiday homecoming for Canadian sailors. A heartbreaking medical update tonight about a Canadian superstar known for having one of the world's most powerful voices, but whose body is becoming weaker. Here's CTV's Jill Makashon.
Dion, a woman whose powerful voice earned her 5 Grammys, is struggling to perform again, according to her sister. She works hard, but she doesn't have control of her muscles, Claudette Dion told a Quebec magazine. The idea is to return to the stage. In what state? I do not know. The vocal cords are muscles. The heart is also a muscle.
Have been diagnosed with a very rare neurological disorder called stiff person syndrome, which affects something like 1 in a million people.
Last December, Dion went public announcing she was battling the disease which causes persistent and painful muscle contractions. She canceled her world tour.
In 2017, I was at the point where I couldn't work.
Tara Zier was a dentist when she was diagnosed with stiff person syndrome. Now she works to create awareness about this rare neurological disease.
The name doesn't do it justice. People aren't just stiff. People can have muscle spasms so severe they break bones, dislocate joints, and result in life-threatening breathing problems.
People living with stiff person syndrome experience varying degrees of severity.
Stiff person syndrome is an autoimmune disease of the nervous system.
It causes the body to attack its own nerve cells and can affect mobility, vision, and speech. Treatment includes antibody therapy and medication.
Undoubtedly, this disease has gotten more attention.
This latest health update comes after Dion's first public appearance in more than 3 years, attending an NHL game with her sons. As this 1 in a million talent battles a 1 in a million disease, Dion's family clings to hope and research continues. Jill Makashon, CTV News, Winnipeg.
Still ahead, tearful family reunions. Canadian service members home for the holidays. A sweet homecoming after spending 4 months deployed in the Indo-Pacific. 3 Canadian naval ships were greeted in BC with smiling faces and tears of joy.
Daddy's waving! Daddy's waving!
Waiting families ready to realize a reunion they dreamed about.
So I was tossing and turning all night because I just was really excited to see her.
Couples back in each other's arms.
And now I'm super happy to see my husband.
Then a special soundtrack.
I'll be home for Christmas.
Jubilation after being separated for so long.
Feels like a dream, honestly. But here I am, holding my daughter in my hands, so I'm happier than I can be.
I'm so happy to have him home.
It's so good to be home.
Priceless reunions just in time for the holidays. Such a heartwarming scene. A Christmas miracle is what a Virginia woman is calling a seemingly ordinary thrift shop find.
As I got close to it, I could see that it was glass and that it was blown glass and that it was just beautiful.
Jessica Vincent paid $3.99 for this vase at a local Goodwill. Turns out it was made by the renowned Italian glass company Vanini. But what made this masterpiece even more special was that it was crafted by the famous Carlos Scarpa. Vincent's $4 buy sold at auction last week for more than $140,000 Canadian. She's got a pretty good eye. After the break, mounting an adoption campaign for some of Canada's most famous animals. The RCMP musical ride has been around almost as long as Canada itself. And this year, for the first time, members of the public are eligible to adopt one of the famous horses. Here's CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver.
These black beauties are a symbol of Canadian pride known around the world. They're bred to be calm, cool, and collected. And soon, some of these highly desirable horses will be heading to new homes.
Each and every one of these horses, they represent our country. They are our Canadian horses. And now Canadians get an opportunity to own them. So I think it's pretty special.
The RCMP has about 140 horses in its musical ride program. But not all are suited for a life of travel, shows, and training. Some are ready for retirement, either because of age or medical issues. For the first time, those horses are being offered up to the public to adopt. In the past, the RCMP's divestment program was only open to nonprofits and charities.
This is super exciting for us. And why? Because for us, it's all about the horse and ensuring that the horse gets what is best suited for it.
Demand this year far surpassed the RCMP's expectations, with about 1,600 applications being submitted in less than a 24-hour period.
Each candidate will be thoroughly vetted to make sure they have the experience, space, and finances to care for the majestic beings. A key criteria?
A home that's full of love. A home that is going to, be there for that horse, care for it, give it everything that it needs.
Grace McDuff hopes to be one of the few selected.
They really are priceless.
A lifetime rider and coach, McDuff has experience with RCMP horses. Her beloved Bronx was bred by the RCMP. He died this summer at 19.
When we heard they were available, thought maybe what better way to honor his memory than to welcome one of his family.
A family with a long legacy the RCMP hopes will continue bringing joy to Canadians well into retirement. Annie Bergeron-Oliver, CTV News, Ottawa.
Such beautiful creatures. And that's a snapshot of this Tuesday for all of us at CTV National News. Thank you for watching. Good night and see you tomorrow.